I'm Monika. I'm CEO of NAD Capital, the fund that invests in electric mobility and that really is pushing forward for the mobility in general, the future of mobility. So pushing forward, connecting the dots, connecting all of our companies and reshaping the outlook of our mobility. I'm also a mom, proud mom, and one of the rare women in the electric automotive industry that is, pushing through the limits and the boundaries and trying to make change. Because I really believe that the only way that we can go forward is by change. I studied journalism and public relations. And honestly, at that point, I thought that, I'm going to do something noble. I'm going to educate people, reveal the truth. I want to do something really nice. But then after my early college days, it was really hard to get, at least in Croatia, it was really hard to get a proper job in the industry. And majority of that was like those yellow kind of journalism that I didn't like. But, you accept certain jobs at the beginning just because you're trying to get your way to the point where you want to be. So I was not really inspired by all of that. I didn't like what I was doing and I really wanted to make a certain change. So at that point, I was exploring, okay, maybe my idea was to join United Nations and apply for the public relations office. But it was also really hard if you're coming from Croatia to get, in some like better countries position, but you could easily get a position in maybe countries like Afghanistan or those kind of countries where nobody wanted to go. So I was thinking, okay, maybe that's the way for me to go. You do 1 or 2 years in Afghanistan and that's it. But then by accident, through a friend, I met Mate. And he was telling me about his great idea about a car. And, he brought me to a garage because at that point, there was no company. There was only a garage and there was a green BMW that he was working on with Igor, another guy who was like really at the early beginnings. And he had some sketches with the designer Adriano who was involved of the future car. And it sounded really
How long ago was that exactly?
That was 2010. So, I went there, I saw all of that, and I was thinking to myself, like, okay, this is maybe, something really not easy to do. Although I was not really aware, how complicated it will be, because I didn't know anything about the automotive industry, honestly. But I was thinking to myself, if I'm not going to try now, when am I going to try? What is stopping me? So I decided to jump in because, of course, those guys over there that were, making this car needed somebody a bit more organized to run all of the different things from financials to the operations and, logistics, organization, PR, and marketing. So I was thinking, okay, at the beginning, I'm going to do a lot of different things, but then in the future, I can maybe more focus on the public relations and marketing side, and let's see how it goes. In the end, I was really one of the co-founders. Can you hear me? Because, okay, it somehow shifted my computer. So I was basically one of the co-founding team members, and I was doing with the company whatever was necessary for the company to survive. So before the Frankfurt Motor Show in 2012, I was even assembling the batteries because, we were only 8 people in the company, although we were lying that we are 20 people, because we were like thinking that nobody's going to believe that a company of 8 people was able to build this kind of car for the Frankfurt Motor Show. Yeah. We have really gone through a lot of ups and downs. I was with the company until 2018 when we closed the round with Porsche. And at that moment, I knew that the company is just going to get bigger in the future. So it was, for me, I honestly first wanted to take a bit of a break because it was really tough 8 years. For first 3 years, not a single day of vacation, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of, moments when we were not sure if the company is going to survive. I remember even that, I sold my house, and at that point we didn't have money. So I decided, from that money from the house, I decided to put it in the company, and that was really a big gamble because nobody knew, if we are going to make it or not. But we all really believed in it, and we all gave, our souls to make it work. And in the end, it really paid off. At the moment when Porsche came, I knew that there is no opportunity for company to fail. It can only either get bigger or maybe reshape in certain way, but it's not going to fail anymore. So that was a point when I left. When I was leaving, they hired 5 people to replace my role. I was chief operations officer, but I was doing, from the financial side, operational side, marketing and PR and sales side, even, all of the negotiations with investors, everything like it goes in the entrepreneur life. You do whatever it takes for the company to survive. So I was like also a lot more stress it would be if I was, in some other company, let's say. And at that point, I decided to switch. Actually, first, as I told you, I wanted to take a bit of a break. But then I met a team of QEV technologies from Spain, and I really loved what they were doing. They are a pioneer when it comes to electric racing. They are currently the only company in the world that is included in all of the electric racing series that exist. And they use the technology from racing to apply it to more mass market products. So the project that really hooked me was a project they had in Philippines. Have you ever been to Philippines?
No, I have not.
Okay, so the main way of transportation for Philippines is jeepneys. Those are like small minibuses that were created after World War II. Basically, American Army left a lot of jeeps. Filipinos took them, cut them in half, prolonged the wheelbase, and made minibuses. And it's iconic vehicle for Philippines, but it's polluting heavily. It's old gas engine inside. You cannot breathe on the streets of Manila, and government had to do something. And here is where QEV came in, and they basically in 60 days created a conversion kit for the jeepney. And there was, the first converted jeepney, and you had all of the ministers of Philippines driving inside and saying that they're going to convert the jeepneys to electric. In the end, the project reshaped a little bit because, you realize that, okay, you're putting high technology powertrain inside, but the vehicle itself is really old and the mechanical parts are breaking. So it doesn't make sense. So in the end, we developed a completely new, bit more modern vehicle, electric one. And now already there is 100 of those vehicles driving around in Philippines. The business is scaling up a bit. And this is something that really hooked me because I noticed that, the technology that we are creating can affect lives of many people. And the project from Philippines can easily be replicated in countries in Africa, in other countries, in Asia, or even, Latin America could be also a perfect approach. So really you can, not only from the perspective of health of those people, but just from a perspective of, for example, for you, you need to understand how it works in Philippines. In Philippines, either, people have smaller fleets that they operate, or sometimes even, one person, they own one bus, and the whole family lives of that one bus. And basically they live from day to day. When they go to work, they earn money from people that are riding in the bus. And, this is the money for that day. So from day to day, they live out of that bus. If they're running on the gas power, they're using $20 for 100 kilometers. If they're running on electricity, they use $2 of electricity for 100 kilometers. So this could be a really drastic impact also on their lives. So in that way, I really got hooked. And basically on Friday, I stopped working in Rimac. On Monday, I was in QEV Technologies. That's for my long vacation. I was there until beginning of 2022 when I decided for a shift due to the private reasons, because I became a mom in 2020, just, when COVID hit. That was a perfect timing, maybe because of the business went slow down. So I had a bit of time with my daughter. but I started traveling immediately in 2021 when it was possible to Spain, and that was hard to balance. And at that point in 2022, I got an offer from a dear friend, and I knew him from early Rimac days because he was the first investor in Rimac Automobili, and he was running his private friends and family investment office, and he needed somebody to more professionally run it because some other investors were joining, so it had to be more structured. And I decided for a change in my career. I joined NAD as a CEO, and we are not a classic investment fund, but since this fund is a pioneer when it comes to investing in electric mobility. Fund was the first investor in Rimac Automobili, first investor in Formula E, first investor in QEV Technologies. So, many companies that we have, we were the first ones to jump in the water while nobody really believed in electric mobility. We also offer to our companies more than just investment. We offer all of the networks, all of the connections, and that's why it was really a perfect fit for me. I could utilize everything that I was growing up and working on in my automotive days, and I can still utilize it for all of the companies in the network. We also try to make cross-pollination between our companies to work together. So, for example, the company in Philippines that is operating the buses, that is considered like Uber of the e-bus industry, uses development services of our portfolio company QEV Technologies, and another portfolio company, EV Dynamics, is producing those buses in China to make them cheap. So we like to, let's say, we close the whole circle with that. This is what I'm doing right now. So trying to help out the companies in our portfolio to grow faster, checking out also everything new that is happening in the electric mobility segment, thinking how the future is going to look like when it comes to not electric mobility, but mobility in general, what is going to reshape our mobility, changes that are going to happen with autonomous vehicles. And yeah, so that was not really short, but
you completely hijacked the interview. So this was a monologue, which is amazing. I am from the media. I work with 3 of the top media companies in the world, and I have a huge trust deficit as far as media is concerned. Their incentives are not aligned to human development and growth, because there's too much money involved, and they're just not aligned anymore. So all of the stories, all the editorial that's going to come out is who's advertising and who's supporting and who's promoting and where are the shares and how will the value of my company look like. And it's generally owned by groups who are only there to make money. So we need to have more of a BBC style model where there's a subscription and you have to tell the truth as much as possible. So I think we need to change media. The other is that we are consuming a lot of our media through social channels, and social channels, sadly, and there I will say sadly, are addiction engines and manipulation engines. Again, making money. So where there is greed and power and money, there's going to be this kind of a problem. So I think there's a fundamental shift that needs to take place as far as media is concerned, and that's why I said unfortunately. But I know the power of media. We're part of that. What we're doing right now is utilizing that power, that facility, the fact that we are sitting thousands of miles away, but we are sharing ideas, thoughts, stories, and then we can distribute this to millions of people. So yes, I understand the power, but I think we need to find some kind of conscience, some moral center, some new business model and structure that will enable us to look at media in a different way, or a new media entity which is there not to make money, but everybody in the world gives, I don't know, $2 a month, and 2 billion people do it. It's $4 billion a month, becomes the biggest media company, and it is not responsible to anyone. Something like that, some kind of movement like that has to happen for media to be honest, because the commercial capitalistic way of the media structures at this moment in time is not working. You can see the United Nations, US, corrupt to the core, They never cover the right stories. Lobbyists, corrupt to the core. I'm all about transformation. I'm not even about change, because I think change is too slow. Because for me, change is like Telling a caterpillar that you have to change into a butterfly. Caterpillar doesn't change into a butterfly. It's the whole process of metamorphosis. It goes into the pupa, into the chrysalis, liquidizes itself, and comes out as this beautiful, colorful, vibrant butterfly. And this is how we need to do it. This is how we need to. And you went through this metamorphosis when I heard your story from journalism to CEO. That's a metamorphosis. That's not change. That is a fundamental transformation of who you were to who you became.
I agree, but transformation maybe sounds scary. So I believe that maybe for a majority of the people, it's easier to say that you're changing, and then it's one step out of a time. You do the transformation in multiple different steps, and it becomes more easier. Because when you say a transformation, it sounds really radical. But I agree with you. In the end, it's a transformation.
Absolutely. No, I totally understand what you're saying, because when I go and I'm presenting at boards and things like that, they have what I call a corporate immune system. We have personal immune system that anything that comes from outside, our antibodies go there and block it and fight it to survive. That's exactly the same. When people like you and me turn up at a board and come from outside and say, "Oh, you need to do this," immediately all the resistance comes in. Can't do this. It's too expensive. It won't work. Batteries are too far away. Attitudes won't change. I love my car, and they'll give you 50 reasons not to do it. So this is a corporate immune system, and part of my work is to actually soften this immune system. And part of the way I do it is through getting women on boards, getting youth on boards, telling stories, looking at alternative ways of so I get that. On the EV side, in terms of adoption, Norway has been a great example. How many countries do you see in the pipeline where this adoption will accelerate, and how long do you think it will take?
So Norway is, example that we all like to use, and that I really believe could be easily replicated, at least in majority of countries of Europe. But the country that really surprised me with all of the push they had is China. China is doing unbelievable work. And China, they did it a bit of differently than Norway. Norway, did it to multiple different levels, multiple subsidies and multiple different things. But for them, it was, they had this one point when the government was putting all of the money into building electric cars. Crazy amount of money was going there. And in the end, of course, you had a lot of fails, but you had like multiple companies that also succeeded and that are making change over there. And it's unbelievable for me to see. Unfortunately, I haven't been to China now from the COVID time. So last trip was just before the COVID. But it was crazy for me to see the transformation they did, from the first time I went to China to 2019, and I hear now it's even more different. So the ways they are changing the transportation and really reshaping and thinking about how to do it, this is something that is unbelievable, especially if you consider that, when you compare the number of people, when you compare how many people in US have vehicles and how many people in China don't have it. They don't have vehicles, they don't own them. So definitely, it's a country where multiple people need to have certain solutions how to transport them in the future. And it's not really feasible maybe for all of them to have cars. So I think that they really did a good job. This is a country maybe to follow, what is going to happen there also. We were first thinking about China. Okay, they are doing something really closed. Okay, they have such a big market. They don't need to focus on expanding. Now you have companies like BYD that is selling a lot in Latin America. They're expanding a lot in Latin America. And I think that if we are not following closely what is going to happen there, maybe companies in European or US countries are going to fall back after China.
It's interesting you say that.
And that was a surprise for me.
It is a surprise also, but I think a place where China wins against a lot of the Western environments is that it can make a decision then just get on with it. While everybody else gets stuck in approvals and processes and so on, especially places like Germany, US, France, everything from unions to elections to this to that. So I think there is a limitation there. The other one is changing attitudes. The younger generation that's now coming through, they never really owned a car, the Gen Z that's coming in. And I have a 24-year-old here in my office, business analyst, and I said, well, why don't you have a car? He said, why would I want a car? And it's a very interesting response from a 24-year-old. I mean, he can go and chase girls and go out on dates, or, you know, that's what we used to do when we were 24 years of age. But for him, an Uber is just as convenient, and he can borrow whatever, and he takes the metro and gets on with it. What I'm saying is there's a shift of attitude. And I think the younger generation that will come through is basically, for them, 5 to 10 years from now, it's just completely normal. What about adoption of autonomy?
I noticed also about my nephews. You know, they are like younger and they didn't want to. For me, it was I went immediately to get my driver's license as soon as I could. So 17 and a half, I had my tests, everything done, and I was waiting for 18 to get the driver's license, and I'm free. I can go wherever I want. But now with Uber, it's not like that. And honestly, I was now thinking about, oh, should I buy a new car or not? And I was really pushing. I was telling to my husband, no, we don't need it. I don't want to buy a car. I don't care. You know, I'm driving with Uber. It's fine. If I'm traveling somewhere, you know, then I take the rent a car and it's fine completely. At the end, my husband bought me a car because he is more probably of, you know, like old-minded, and he was thinking like, no, we need to have a car. But for me, it was like really because I'm constantly thinking about this shift that is coming and everything, and it was useless for me to have a car that is standing majority of the time on the parking lot.
Now, big automobile, and I call the mobility industrial complex. You have the defense industrial complex, which makes weapons. You have the medicines and all of that. But I think it's a $10 trillion industry, the mobility industry. So it is a complete complex of industry cross fertilization. What are the big things need to happen for a Mercedes or BMW or for a Ford and so on? Is basically announce in, say, 5 years' time that we will not produce a combustible engine car anymore. What needs to change?
But I think that now when you look at those big giants, majority of them have in their policies and in their plans to stop production of gas-powered cars at certain point in the future.
So that takes it. I think the spectrum that I'm looking at, what they're talking about is up to 2040. So when I look at the numbers, they're like 10%, 15%, 20%. I'm trying to reverse that and say, when does it become 80%? And what do we need to do to get them so that 80% of all our vehicles coming through now will be EV?
But then you're coming to the point that also you're coming to the point that it's not so easy. Even if they say, okay, we're switching completely to electric, you have a problem of the infrastructure that is not there yet. So it's something that needs to happen a bit more in parallel, I would say. Because imagine if all of a sudden, you know, it's easy if you're buying an electric car and you have your house and you have your garage. You're going to install the charging point if needed, or you're going to plug it in the regular socket and you don't care. But people who live in flat buildings, where are they going to charge a car? What are they going to do? So in that sense, I really don't see, you know, this transformation happening in a year time. I really see it as a process. And I also see it as a process that is going to be disrupted again by the way we use mobility. So not selling so many cars. And this is a shift that is going to completely shake the whole industry. So it's now the question is how quickly this shift is going to happen. So if you look at, you know, San Francisco, we already have autonomous vehicles driving on the roads and being in use. But can we push that more quickly? And, you know, what is then going to happen with all of the plans of the automotive industry that they have on the table and the shift they have on the table?
No, I agree. And you know that human error whether it's in planes or in cars, is the number one reason for deaths on the road and accidents. Human error, not machine error. So our perception
Yeah.
is where the gap is, because more people die because we have people who are drunk, people who are tired, people who are not very good, people who have made a mistake, they're distracted, they're on their cell phone. That's where mistakes happen, and that's how. So yes, cat versus kid, but these are other. Anyway, it's a bigger discussion for another day. A couple of final questions. Monika, you are in the mobility space, which is closely linked to sustainability, which is therefore closely linked to climate change. And it's a big, big, big difference and shift that you're bringing into the world. What kind of a world will you be leaving behind for your beautiful daughter?
Hopefully better than it is today. Hopefully, what I think is really the most important goal in the end, that we don't mess up with the climate. And I think to do that, we need to think about multiple different layers. So we are not only have to change the mobility, but we have to change a lot of our industries. We have to change, for example, what really bothered me is like how much trash we are creating. It's unbelievable. So this is something that has to change completely. And I'm trying to do the best that I can from the small actions. From the mobility side, I try to impact big because I have knowledge, I have connections, I'm in this industry. But on personal side, I really try to do as much as I can from the recycling side, from not using too much energy at home, like small steps. Because I believe if all of us takes those small steps, it will really make a big impact.
So
and I'm afraid about that because I see the change happening. We had like this year in Croatia, we had storms that we never ever had before, that never happened. Those storms would be considered like tornadoes probably somewhere in US, because it was the winds were moving the roof, and this never happened before. So I'm really afraid what else will happen for our kids, and I don't like that. So I think that all of us have to come first from us, and if we all start making changes, the impact is going to be big.
My final question, Monika, is that if you left a message in a bottle and your daughter finds it in 2030, let's say 6-7 years from now, what's the message for her in 7 years' time that you'd like to tell her today?
Whoa, I don't know. I got the goosebumps even thinking about it. This is something that I would have to, give me some time. Maybe I send you like in half an hour or hour. I need a little bit of time to digest.
No.
That one is a big one. That one is a big one.
That's why I wanted spontaneous. I mean, whatever you think. Because to me, a message in a bottle for the future of people you love dearly is really important. So just whatever you think.
Well, it's really hard. A message for my daughter, in a bottle for the future. It's hard because something that you would say right now, it doesn't matter for the future.
Yeah.
And what do you want to keep pushing for the future? Maybe something that is like really important for me, and it was really always important for me, and this is something that I want to transmit with a lot of people. Because in life it always happens when you hit the rock bottom. It doesn't matter. Just, push harder, swim to the surface, and it will all be well. Just keep going. And that's the most important thing for me. And that was always leading me when I was having hard moments that I didn't know. I really didn't know how to figure out. I didn't know how are we going to survive in Rimac, or how are things going to be next day. What is going to happen? You're having in your life multiple different times, business, private ones, and when you hit the rock bottom, just keep swimming to the shore and it's all going to be fine. Swim to the surface.
That's a great message, Monika. It's been an absolute privilege, my pleasure, and a blessing. And thanks to Mohammed, who introduced you to us. I hope we will have a follow-on conversation at some stage as we start shaping this conversation into something meaningful. So I'm very grateful, and thank you for us.